All right, guys. So a group of Republicans were caught on camera basically thanking Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin for getting in the way of Biden's agenda. And I'm putting that in quotes because I'm going to talk more about that later. And this has pissed off a whole lot of progressives, okay? They pissed, right? They're upset because the progressives have been saying the whole time that, hey, the GOP is not trying to work with us. They're not trying to pass any legislation. Therefore, we need to get Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema in line. Okay, they want to go throughout the legislative process without the Republicans. Okay, they want to essentially do reconciliation. They want to get rid of filibuster. They want to make DC a state. They basically want to eliminate the Republican Party, right? And they see Joe Manchin as Kyrsten Sinema in the way, right? And they've been on this campaign essentially now attacking them for it, right? And this video right here is all the proof that they need to basically get super triggered, okay, by the fact that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema at this point basically are working in favor of Republicans. Now, without further ado, I'm going to let you guys see this video and go from there.
We have a bunch of people running around, particularly progressives, who all they want to talk about is, well, let the people's will be done. No. We don't want the people's will to be done immediately because you have the passions of the majority that remember, our Constitution was set up to protect who? Minority rights, not the majority rights.
But the reality is they are pushing as far as they can. Fortunately for us, the filibuster is still in effect in the Senate. Without that, we would be dead meat, and this thing would be, then we'd be having a little bit more frantic discussion than we're having today. But thank goodness for Sinema and Joe Manchin.
I like it when AOC is going after Joe Manchin. Like, this is great. This is great for me. You know, it makes my job easier as a conservative because, you know, I can go to Joe Manchin or Kyrsten Sinema and be like, hey guys, you know, and I'm really sorry you're having to go through that. That's just a shame. Nobody should be treated like this. I just really thank you for standing for the country. And you know, all of you in this room, people at home on Zoom, let me tell you right now, if you want to do one thing to keep the republic afloat, call Joe Manchin's office, call Kyrsten Sinema's office, be polite, smile as you talk on the phone. You know, if you talk on the phone with a smile, your voice sounds better. You just be like, hi, I'm here to talk to Senator Joe Manchin and thank him for keeping the filibuster intact. I'm just a Republican voter from state X, doesn't matter, but I just want to say thank you. Because what's happening up here is the fact that they've decided not to blow open the filibuster, in a lot of respects, is going to save the Republic from the worst things that the left wants to do. And H.R. 1 is the tip of the iceberg.
So we just got to hold the line right now. Keeping the filibuster is a big part of that, and all the other elements that I know y'all are discussing this week.
It's a lot easier to pass giveaways than it is to take them away. Really? And everybody thinks, oh, well, you know, we'll just take them away. No, we won't. No, we won't. So please, if any of you have any thoughts about the idea that a filibuster removal, it was a good deal. And I know the previous president was for it and still is. It's a bad idea. Call Joe Manchin and say thank you. Seriously. Yeah. Call Kyrsten Sinema and say thank you.
So the bigger question though is, what is there that is bipartisan hope? Like where we could get involved? Is there anything?
I mean, I think that depends a little bit on what comes out of the Senate. I mean, in the House, no. If something comes, I mean, I'm just being blunt. I mean, there are some bipartisan bills in the House on various matters, but on this particular topic, I'm unaware of anything significant moving because of the way, I mean, look, you're seeing it happen right now in transportation and infrastructure, right? Pelosi is just tacking hard to the left, AOC and company. You saw it unfold with this whole Pelosi, Schumer, Biden's thing on infrastructure. We have no idea where they are. So it's going to be dependent on the Senate and what Senator Scott is able to work out with whatever coalition he can get to 60, as long as 60 is the number, which is obviously something to question. I mean, honestly, right now, for the next 18 months, our job is to do everything we can to slow all of that down to get to December 2022, and then get in here and lead.
You had mentioned infrastructure, and I was just, this whole brouhaha over the weekend with Biden saying that they were going to ram through all this all these liberal wish list things. Why are y'all going to vote for that? Are you going to vote for the one bill if they're going to put all this other stuff in a bill that they just ram through without any bipartisan
Well, I don't vote for anything in the House of Representatives right now. I mean, not flippantly, but there's literally it's just nothing to
But I mean, I know
vote
it's the
for.
Senate, but
The Senate, so what happened, right, the Senate was allegedly working to cut a deal. The people who are working to cut the deal, by the way, were not your conservative warriors in the Senate. And so they're cutting a deal, but then Biden, who came out and said we got a deal, allowed Pelosi basically to kind of step in and go, oh, no you don't. You're only going to get that deal if you have reconciliation with all this liberal garbage. And then Biden said, oh, wait, okay, yeah. And then kind of backed away from the deal. Then he kind of came back away from the veto threat, so nobody knows what anybody's going to do right now. That's the thing. This is the problem. I actually say, thank you, Lord, 18 more months of chaos
Confusion.
and the inability to get stuff done. That's what we want.
I agree.
All right, guys. So there's a lot to kind of break down there, okay? Let me start with this. The way I'm going to give my commentary on this video, guys, I'm going to give it from the perspective of, the progressives being screwed over, right? Being screwed over by the establishment. Because they're going to be mad at people on the right, and they're going to be mad at Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, but really their anger should be directed towards Joe Biden. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is Joe Biden's agenda. And Joe Biden is the one that's not really trying to get Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema in line for his own agenda. That's why, I've made the argument that I honestly don't know if Biden wants his own agenda. Because it seems to me that Biden doesn't want to get rid of filibuster. Biden's not really trying to push super hard for reconciliation. Okay, he's just not. Because if that's what he wanted to do, he'd be like, you know what? Screw the Republicans. We're going at this alone. And Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, you guys are going to get in line or we're going to primary you. That's literally what he would do if he really wanted the agenda. Because honestly, at the end of the day, guys, I mean, the result is the same, right? If they try to primary Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin and they end up losing a seat, right? It ends up being flipped to Republican or whatever. That's no different than what's happening right now, which is nothing, right? There's literally no different. So you really don't have that much to lose if you was to do that. In my opinion, that means that the progressives, they're going to get mad at Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and the Republican Party, but they really should be mad at Biden because Biden is the president of the United States. Okay? And a lot of people are going to find what the Republicans said to be controversial in terms of, the Constitution and government being set up to protect minority rights. And Rick Santorum is right. He's actually 100% right about that. Our government literally is set up so that the majority cannot just overrun the minority. That's literally how the government is set up. That is why the House of Representatives representation is apportioned by population. And in the Senate, each state gets 2 senators, no matter how small or big the state is. That is literally why it's set up that way. The federal government is set up in a way to not be efficient. Our government is not supposed to be efficient. Now, I will argue in modern times, our government should definitely be more efficient considering the problems that we face. But that's not really the point. The point is that it is set up to be this way. It is set up to where there's supposed to be gridlock. Okay, where you have to compromise. You have to meet your opponent in the middle. Right? And people on the far right doesn't like this. People on the far left don't like this. But this is literally the way that the founders set it up. This is why it is. Okay? Now, progressives make the argument about the filibuster, being like, filibuster is giving small states and Republicans even more power. And it's like, well, when Democrats were in the minority, they used the filibuster. It benefited them. And you guys were not complaining about the filibuster when you were blocking Tim Scott's police reform bill that you claim that you want so much. You claim you want police reform so much, but you use that same law that you guys want to repeal to block Republican legislation. You also use it to block the Civil Rights Act, or to at least attempt to try to block the Civil Rights Act, but Democrats don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. You see, like, that's the problem with these progressives. They don't understand history. They don't understand how our government is supposed to run. And then they want to boohoo and cry because Republicans say, yeah, no, we do want to protect minority rights. I mean, Republicans right now are in the minority, okay? They're in the minority. So, of course, they're going to protect that. Of course, they're going to want to fight back against Biden's agenda. Now, does I think that means the Republicans should just be obstructionists to a fault? No, they shouldn't be. And I think that's a weakness of the party, is that they are obstructionists to a fault. But for the most part, they probably should be pressing back against Biden's agenda, because we can't afford to spend any more money, right? We cannot afford to spend $4 trillion more. And if the progressives had it their way, they would spend $10 trillion more because they believe that money grows on trees. Okay? That's what they believe. And you have to have a responsible party. You have to have a place where legislation is supposed to cool off, like the Senate, in which cooler heads can prevail and you can get legislation that's actually going to be good for the American people. Now, I will argue that, most bipartisan legislation nowadays, the issue is not that it's bipartisan. The issue is that most of the time bipartisanship means that they sold out to big corporate America. That's what it means for the most part, because all these politicians can really agree on, guys, is helping themselves or helping the big money interests. That's really the only things they can agree on. Okay, so I actually do have a problem with bipartisanship to a certain extent. But people, again, they want to get mad because Rick Santorum and the Republicans are telling the truth, because they are thanking Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema for essentially helping them out, right? That's just politics. This is how politics works. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are in purple states. Arizona, John McCain was a senator there, right? Arizona's not that far left. They're still a decently conservative state. So they're from two purple states. If they get on board with this far left agenda from the Biden administration, Biden's agenda, right? If you believe that's what he wants, I don't. I think that they're all in the same bed. I think Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and Joe Biden are all on the same page, and I think they're okay with that. I think they're okay with it. That's why Biden's not pushing back. But if they was to get on board with this far left agenda, they could lose their own seats. They could lose their own jobs, because people in their states may not necessarily be on board with that. Okay, and another thing that progressives got pissed off about, that Rick Santorum was talking about, is how if you get rid of filibuster, people say, well, you can just repeal the legislation, later on down the road, right? You can just get rid of it. And he says, no, that's actually not true. You just can't get rid of it. It's hard to actually get rid of it. And he's right. He actually is right. You just can't get rid of it, because look at what happened with the Republicans and Obamacare. When Obamacare was implemented, the Republicans have tried tooth and nail to repeal it, but they just couldn't do it. The reason why they couldn't do it, because Obamacare has basically become so ingrained in our healthcare system. There's a lot of people that, are kind of benefiting from it, regardless of whether or not it's good or bad for the country. I'm just saying that there are people that are benefiting from it, that are getting insurance that otherwise wouldn't. And if the Republicans were to repeal that, then essentially that would be bad for them. That would be bad for certain representatives in certain states whose people have benefited from that or feel like they benefited from it. Again, that's not me saying whether it's overall good or bad. I'm just saying, I'm telling you why the Republicans failed to repeal Obamacare. It's for what Rick Santorum was saying. Big government programs are hard to repeal. Once people get hooked on the government teat, okay, it's hard for them to let go, right? Because it's government services. It's free stuff. People are never going to let it go. That's why they keep begging for stimulus checks. There's a petition right now, I think millions of people have signed to get another stimulus check. Once you get it once or twice or three times, we got stimulus checks 3 times, people are going to want to keep getting it, regardless of whether or not we need it. Even though, we have all these jobs opening, employers are struggling to hire people. People still like, oh, we need stimulus checks. No, you need to get a job. Right? You need to get a job. You don't need a stimulus check. But again, people love free stuff from the government. And just because the majority wants something doesn't make it necessarily good. In some situations, yes, it is good that the majority wants something and that what the majority agrees on is, in fact, good for the country. That is true in certain situations. But in certain situations, it's not necessarily good. Okay? Majority is not always right. And that's why when the progressives always want to use this argument that, well, most people support our policies. Well, does that make your policies good, right? Those are two different arguments. Just because most people support Bernie Sanders style single payer healthcare doesn't mean that that's good for the country or that's the direction we should go in. That's not what it means. And that's something that progressives forget. But like I said, people are going to be pissed about this. Okay, they're going to be super upset because the GOP is thanking Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema for standing their ground and not repealing the filibuster. But really, in actuality, they should be looking at Biden because it's Biden's job to get them in line, right? It really is, because he it's his agenda. He's the president of the United States. If he comes out and he says, y'all got to get in line, you got to get behind this legislation, or we're primarying you, that puts them in a position where they got to make a decision. They got to make a decision. And Joe Biden's not really doing that. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.